often look at satellite images, you should be able to see some weird mountains in southwestern China. Normally, mountains look like this, in ranges and ridges. But here, the mountains actually look like this. They're in clusters. They spread out like copy-paste across a huge area, looking absolutely spectacular. The towns where people live are basically squeezed between these clustered little mountains. You know why these mountains look so weird? They don't really look naturally formed. They kind of look like someone artificially piled them up in little bunches. Yeah, we were really curious what this place looks like in real life. Why does it look this way? Our trip around China happened to reach eastern Yunnan. So we entered this strange mountain region. We kept driving along the mountain roads until we reached a county town called Xigao. Even though it was getting dark, you could clearly see these round mountains not only surrounded the county town, but actually grew right in the middle of it, looking very abrupt, especially after daybreak the next day. The sense of abruptness intensified. To gain a bird's eye view of the surroundings, we decided to climb these small city mountains. From its base, the mountain appears an easy climb, just a little hill, right?
But climbing is a whole different story.
You still have no idea. All I can say is,
Let's go.
can I stay over?
We made it to the top. I can't go on.
When we climbed up this small high point in the city, we found the mountains here grow from the earth-like clusters, bunches upon bunches, densely layered together, also like a pastry chef's delicate decorations on a giant cake, graceful and vivid. This scene is amazing. This should be a completely new landform we've seen since our trip around China began. If you still remember middle school geography, you should be familiar with its name. It is called karst topography. Although my hometown doesn't have this kind of mountain, I always see it in the cartoons we watched as kids. Whenever China was mentioned, they'd bring out this type of landform like a stereotype. I was puzzled by this shape at first, but later learned that China has the most widespread distribution of karst topography. You can imagine these little mountains as one whole piece of rock, except these rocks are much more fragile and soluble compared to ordinary stones. With rainwater continuously dissolving and eroding for millions of years, they eventually became individual little hills. Gypsum is also a soluble mineral. You can understand it this way. This land is like a giant gypsum board. Some hidden deity in the sky used wind and rain as carving tools to sculpt this massive artwork. This is art that no one could imagine or recreate. In some karst mountain areas with thin soil, even a little human activity there can very easily trigger a natural disaster, something we learned in geography class. That is what we call rocky desertification. So, we went to the museum, and what we saw was like this. If things aren't changed, farming here, even getting water or just moving around, it'll be tough, because it looks like he is farming right on the rocks.
Mud's just mud when it's on the rock.
Actually, farming's not easy.
Struggling.
Wow, this is a world apart from the flatland farming we saw earlier on our China trip, like up north for walnuts. Everybody plants corn, but here, this is the only way it works. We've seen terraced fields in Yunnan, but at least they were all connected.
You can't really call this spot a farm field, because as far as you can see, it is all rocks, and the tiny seedling just got stuck in a rock crack, so it is like this. This side's all rock, and all around are just rocks. Just this one small patch has dirt, and then they just planted the seed.
However, starting in the 1990s, Xikou County undertook graphite upgrades after decades of weathering the elements. They adapted their farming to the land. The environment went from this to this. Before, we only heard of the sand fighters out west, barely aware of the odd carvings in old maps. But these warriors against petrifying magic deserve equal honor. That is why you often see in our town statues of figures lifting rocks and shouldering their pickaxes. At this point, you might wonder, if that rain seeps underground, how would that affect this landscape as rain seeps down? Forming rivers, it starts carving out a massive underground channel, forming what we call a solution cavern. And that is when you just gotta push down on the surface a bit, and a huge pit just opens up. Right here, of course, you can see the shadows of these pits on satellite images, but we still wanted to go see what is really inside those pits. So, we left Yunnan. Alright, we're now in Bei's, Guangxi, and karst topography is also widespread here, but the forms have taken on new variations.
Mario said our place was right up front, and what I am looking at now, this is the deal. Does this look like a place to stay? Guy.
It really is.
Whoa, right? Pretty awesome, huh?
很棒，李总。
Wow. Okay, we're now inside this tent. As you can see, this is what Mario called premium lodging. Looking at it now, even though it is just a tent, it does feel pretty cozy when you walk in. My expectations were so low because when I was doing that final stretch, I thought we'd be sleeping in some graveyard tonight anyway. It is already dark now, and we can't see anything around us. We'll check it out tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll see tomorrow. So that is how the night went. The next morning, we stepped out of the tent to find ourselves surrounded by karst mountains, and not far away, there is that big crater we saw on the map earlier. But when you are actually standing in front of it, you realize it is way bigger than it looked on the map. So it has this straightforward scientific name. It is called a sinkhole.
Looking at it now gives you kind of a trypophobia feeling, you know, like you were suddenly looking at a perfectly good mountain that collapsed midway. This is way bigger than I imagined.
This is the Dashiwei sinkhole group in Base, Guangxi. Just looking down from above, it is hard to imagine the underground currents flowing beneath these seemingly peaceful mountains. There are over 30 sinkholes of various sizes here. If you are curious about what is inside these sinkholes, you can find professional cave explorers locally to take you deep inside for a closer look. We originally thought this would be a relaxed and enjoyable low-intensity hike, but it is actually not that simple. While it looks like just a regular big pit from the outside, the interior is extremely complex due to water erosion and sediment buildup. The structure diagram looks like this. Entering the cave is like climbing a small mountain. At the cave entrance, you can see white mist billowing out. This isn't some strange gas, but because the temperature inside is so low, the water vapor at the entrance condenses into droplets, kind of like opening a fridge door in summer. That is why locals call this the breathing cave. When you reach the cave entrance, it really feels like the mouth of a giant dragon breathing, and wouldn't you know it, right then it starts pouring rain with rolling thunder, making that feeling even stronger.
We're about to enter the cave.
Alright, thanks. When you step into the cave from the entrance, you'll see landscapes completely different from the surface. Since sunlight can only reach a few meters into the opening, you can clearly observe how the lush vegetation gradually thins out as light decreases until only moss remains. What geography books describe about light's effect on vegetation is perfectly demonstrated here within just a few meters. On the way in, you'll see many sharp-edged rocks of various sizes. These are pieces that naturally fell here after breaking off from the cave walls. Even now, you can still hear the underground river rushing through the cave. But some of these rocks look unusually smooth, almost like they're fused together. What is covering them is calcium carbonate deposits formed by dissolution. This is how stalactites form too. Moving forward, you'll see the ceiling rapidly rise up, revealing a massive chamber called the Cavern Hall. Looking up, there is a small opening in the ceiling. From this tiny skylight down to the underground river level is a full 450 meters. With a longer exposure time, you can see what it looks like inside. And if it is not raining today, at noon, light beams will shoot straight down through the skylight, creating this absolutely breathtaking and truly magnificent scene. When we return to the cave entrance, it really feels like coming back to reality from another world. Almost everything we witnessed in that dark cave changes at a pace beyond our lifetime. But for Earth, it is just a moment.
I saw this thing cutting through the rock happen really fast. It is surprisingly slow.
Stalactites grow just a few millimeters per year. On average, at 3 millimeters yearly. It takes 10 years for 3 centimeters, or 100 years for 30 centimeters. We won't see it in our lifetime.
Geography is indeed a field requiring deep exploration, but it is also not that mysterious because it is part of our daily lives. For people living here, their first encounter with karst landscapes wasn't in textbooks, but on nearby gentle slopes, in deep caves. In some ways, this terrain is truly challenging, but it is also fundamental to their life here. Fierce winds across deserts, rainwater dissolving stone mountains, earth movements, rising or sinking, shape vastly different homelands for different people. Looking across China and the world, no place is truly a chosen land, perfectly flawless. But we can equally say that every place has its unique beauty, irreplaceable. This is why we love this world. Winds that sweep past the stone forest blow through county towns, caressing young faces as they look up, seeing not karst formations, but their homeland mountains.
Some people wondered if such deep places might have something strange or scary. But these are just objective geographical features, same as mountains, rivers, plateaus, and snow peaks outside.
Our China tour is still rolling. Hit that follow button now. There is still a long way to go.